Both racers finished their preparations, and Wind Spirit lined up next to Scootaloo, crouching down and dragging a front hoof on the dirt in anticipation. The audience cheered and stamped their hooves on the ground in applause. Featherweight fluttered down a few feet in front of the two racers, preparing to wave the flag. Wind Spirit let out a snort before looking over, taunting at Scootaloo. "You're going down." This felt familiar, Scootaloo thought to herself. Not too long ago, Rainbow Dash told her, Sweetie Belle and Apple Bloom, the awesome story of how she raced against two bullies and got her cutie mark. The story was so fresh in her mind that she even remembered the bully said the exact same thing to young Rainbow Dash. A determined look formed on Scootaloo's face as she glanced over at Wind Spirit, quoting her role model. "In history, maybe. Get set!" Featherweight raised the white flag, causing both Scootaloo and Wind Spirit's eyes to narrow in concentration. Scootaloo's wings revved like a dirt bike as she licked her lips. This feeling. It must be what Rainbow Dash felt like when she had her first race. A proud feeling swelled in the young Pegasi's chest, as she knew she wanted to be just like Rainbow Dash in every way possible. This was just one of many steps in the process. Go! The two ponies shot down the path like rockets, leaving behind clouds of dust as their classmates cheered and followed as best they could, but it was no use. The two racers were already too far ahead and were steadily approaching the base of the hill. Once they reached the trail's flat, Wind Spirit gained the second burst of speed and took off in a full sprint. Scootaloo shifted in the imaginary gear and began to close on him as best she could. "Is that all you got?" Wind Spirit teased as the orange Pegasus sped up next to him. Just as Scootaloo tried to inch past him, Wind Spirit bumped into her intentionally, causing her to spit out of control. "See you at the finish line, loser." Wind Spirit laughed as he left Scootaloo in a trail of dust. Watching her dishonest opponent drift further away, Scootaloo fluttered her wings and launched herself down the road to catch up. She gritted her teeth as her eyes flared with anger, resentment, and most important of all, determination. "Not like this. I'm not going to lose because I gave up." Her tiny wings revved up in a higher pitch, launching her down the trail with immeasurable amounts of acceleration. The wind resistance began cutting into her coat and manes like daggers. Her purple eyes began to tear up her blurry vision. Her mouth went dry, muscles and ligaments in her wings began to tighten like twine ready to snap. It was an act of sheer wind power guiding Scootaloo to her destination. "This is my race." The air pressure around the young Pegasus cut into her more. She felt a strong force pressing into her chest, forcing the air out of her lungs. Little knees began to buckle, screws began to loosen, metals creaked, wheels began to spark, but then nothing. Time seemed to be as if it was be at standstill for a brief moment as arcs of purple lightning began to dance off her orange wings. It was now visible. The now visible cone of wind fighting against Scootaloo let out a howl in anguish as she punched a hole through it. "And I'm going to win it!" With a loud explosion of thunder, the little scooter-riding Pegasus stretched and distorted into a purple and orange blur of lightning that cut into the road, leaving behind twin trails of purple flames in its wake. The finish line was barely a quarter mile away for Wind Sprint. Looking back one last time to make sure his little orange opponent wasn't in sight, he broke out of his sprint and into more of a ginger gallop. Before the arrogant earth colt could laugh to himself, a thunderous explosion caused the earth colt to look back once more. Over the horizon, Wind Sprint could barely make out the arcs of purple lightning. But it wasn't coming down from the sky. It was coming from the ground. No way. Panicked, Windsprint turned to his destination and lowered his head as he went out into full sprint. His dark blue mane waved wildly as he continued to gallop. Then, with a thunderous rumble under his hooves, Windsprint saw an orange and purple blur shoot under him. The sky, the ground, and the sky again. The ground getting closer, the sky one last time, and blackness followed by a loud thud of concussive force that rippled through the colt's body. Windsprint opened his eyes to see that he was lying between two trails of purple flames, burning and cracking along the ground. He looked down at the path to see an orangish-purple blur speeding past the finish line while uprooting bushes and tearing of leaves of the trees along the path. Windsprint's eyes widened. The only thing the young colt could say was, "Whoa." Scootaloo skidded out of control for several feet, leaving flaming donuts in the ground. Just as she was about to hit the wall archway leading to Ponyville streets, she regained control and slid to a halt. The small orange wings twitched and fluttered sporadically for a few moments before folding onto her back, steaming. That was the fastest the filly had ever gone, and it took a toll on her small frame. Tossing her scratched and smoking purple helmet to the ground, Scootaloo stumbled off her scooter and fell back, breathing heavily, barely able to keep her eyes open. Staring up at the blue cloudless sky, she could feel her eyelids getting heavy as everything went dark. Aside from her breathing, everything was silent. "That was the coolest thing I've ever seen," an unusually cheerful voice called out. Scootaloo's eyes shot open to see a smiling yet equally exhausted Windsprint standing over her. As a sign of good sportsmanship, the blue earth pony held out his foreleg, which Scootaloo grabbed as he pulled her stumbling up to her hooves. "I don't like losing, but I can't compete with that," Windspirit said in defeat, pointing over the two purple embers still scorching along the dirt trail. Scootaloo's eyes widened as her mouth fought a losing battle with her mind to find the right words. But it could only let out a simple sound. "Whoa." "I know, right?" Windsprint agreed. He scratched the back of his neck nervously before continuing. "Hey, sorry about bumping you earlier. I just..." Windsprint trailed off, trying to apologize. "It's cool. No pony likes to lose," Scootaloo answered back smugly while trying to sound forgiving, but failing miserably. "You know what? You're alright, kid," the blue earth colt complimented while holding a front hoof out. "We should do this again one day." "You're on," Scootaloo countered back proudly. The two young ponies punched their hoofs together, laughing for a moment, before Windsprint took off into town. Just before he got ready to turn the corner, Windsprint turned back and waving to his new rival. Scootaloo waved back as Windsprint disappeared into the corner of one of the town's structures. "Wow, I did it!" Scootaloo praised herself while pumping a hoof up in the sky. "I won my first race, and it was awesome, too. I don't know what the thing I did was, but it was awesome. Just like Rainbow..." "Huh?" Feeling a warm presence on her hips, Scootaloo looked back to see a glowing light fading out on her flank. The light left behind was the sparkling image of a spinning black tire with dark purple and light purple highlighted flames shooting out of the back of it. The orange Pegasus stared at her flank in disbelief. Purple eyes dilated, almost holding back tears. Her mouth formed a wide smile and her body began to convulse, unable to contain the excitement. "This is awesome!" Scootaloo's shout echoed across the hills, startling the birds out of their nearby trees. The orange Pegasus began jumping around in excitement, feeling rejuvenated, even though she pushed herself to her absolute limits just moments earlier. I got my cutie mark! I got my cutie mark! I got my cutie mark! The filly cried out, bouncing and flipping around. I can't wait to show Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle! Scootaloo stopped in mid-celebration. She was so caught up in the moment that she had completely forgot about her fellow Crusaders. They were supposed to meet at their treehouse later before another adventure. She felt a knot in her throat, and the guilt began to weigh heavily on her back, rooting her to the ground. They were the Cutie Mark Crusaders, and they were supposed to find their talents together. This could literally tear a rift between them, the Pegasus thought to herself. What am I gonna do? Scootaloo said to herself with shrunken pupils. I can't show them I have a cutie mark. What if they get jealous? Scootaloo began pacing around in worry, thinking to herself. She snapped to a complete halt when another realization. What if they don't want me to be a Cutie Mark Crusader anymore? It was just another peaceful day in the Ponyville market. Applejack was running the apple stand in Big Macintosh's place. Rose, Lily, and Daisy were busy restocking up their flower shop and watering their plants. Lyra and Bon Bon were sitting at a table outside the ice cream parlor, sharing a banana split, while Carrot Top tended to her new carrot dog wagon and was busy selling her product to a line of hungry customers. A gray Pegasus with a blonde mage emerged from Sugar Cube Corner, happily skipping across the street while balancing a particularly large muffin atop her head. The sound of thunder vibrated through the cobblestone below her hooves, causing her to freeze in place. With crossed golden eyes, she peered down the street and began to focus her vision in just enough time to see the orange and purple blur roar past her, causing her to spin out of control. Regaining her composure, the cross-eyed Pegasus angrily shook a hoof in the direction of the blue blur before realizing something missing atop her head. She looked up to see her freshly baked treat falling from the sky and spread her jaws wide, catching the muffin in her mouth and chewing on it with inflated cheeks while happily rubbing her belly. Banana muffin. Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, are you in there? Scootaloo called out from the base of the treehouse. Hearing no response, the orange filly carefully shuffled up the steps, stopping at the front door. Is any pony in there? She asked one more time while pulling open the door and peeking inside. Empty. Rushing inside, Scootaloo began to look around the various supplies at their base. On the way to the treehouse, she had settled on an idea. Hide her cutie mark. At least for a little while, until she can get Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle their cutie marks. That way, she could still be a Cutie Mark Crusader. It was the perfect plan, but she needed something to hide her mark. The orange Pegasus ran a hoof through her mane while looking around. Eventually, her purple eyes locked on a makeup kit that Sweetie Belle borrowed from her sister Rarity. No, too easy to wipe off. She looked around for some more and saw a stack of paint cans and a brush that Apple Bloom borrowed from Big Macintosh. Too messy. Scootaloo began to pace around the room in frustration. She needed something to cover up her cutie mark, and fast. Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle could be showing up at any minute now. Walking around the room, her eyes drifted over the paint in consideration again, until she absent-mindedly bumped into something soft, causing her to fall down as a roll of cloth fell over her head. Scootaloo looked down at the cloth angrily. "Dump fabric!" she called out before reaching her hoof out to pick the orange roll back up. Hey, wait a minute.